place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and my co-host today is Queen Lav, and our guest today is Lunaria and Regina. And we get to have a conversation on the theme of today, which is fear. This big thing that we all gotta face every day we get up. Some of us are professional fear mongers, or we or we are fear slayers, or we want to look at it. But we get to talk about fear today and see how that been present in all our life, and maybe we can share some stuff today that you might look at your life a little bit differently. So I'm gonna start off with Lunaria, if you don't mind sharing with us where you're hailing from, um, what you specialize in, how you adding value to the world, and who you being a hero to.
I might need you to ask those questions to me again as my early morning brain. I'm hailing from Sydney, Australia. Well, 4 hours south of Sydney. You probably wouldn't heard. It's a place called Surf Beach, and it is as picturesque as you might be able to picture with a name like that. So
Wow.
I'm hailing from there. That is where I am currently in the world. What was the next question, Asha?
What you specialize in?
What do I specialize in? I teach people how to have a phenomenal relationship with themselves so that they can get out of their own way, be more authentic, be more confident, and have actually enduring, lasting happiness.
And then how you adding value to the world and who you being a hero to. There we go.
Oh, I love it. How I add value to the world? Well, is by doing the work that I do.
Mhm.
If I'd be more specific around that, if I could, is that I think that I add the most value to the world by the internal conversations I have with myself and with my God. So with my creator.
Mhm.
Because I think that as I unravel my own conditioning, as I unravel my own fears, limitations, that is what I put back into the world. So everything that I experience, I end up teaching. So it is the internal work. We could say that the value that I give is what I'm putting out in the world, but I actually think it comes from the willingness to go within into my dark places that then result in the work. And I did remember your last question. Who am I being a hero to? Look, I think be your own hero. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I continue to show up for myself. I continue to rescue myself, if I would, from my conditioning and my programming that keeps me in fear, that keeps me in doubt, and that keeps me in lack.
Mhm. You're gonna be a great conversationalist for this conversation during one fear. And I love that was a
Thank you.
brilliant answer by the way when you're saying that how you adding value to the world is based on how you treat yourself, how you see yourself, because that's what you project in the world. So if you're
Mm,
in a lot of fear, in a lot of stress, and a lot of worry, guess what? That's what you're putting out in the world. So that's what you add into the world. So if you're low confidence, then same thing, right? The world need a more confident person, need a more confident Lunaria. And if you're confident,
mm.
you are more impactful in the world. So I love your answer, by the way. And
Thank you so
Regina, how
much.
about you, my friend?
Well, I was listening to Lunaria and she did my introduction.
Fantastic. Synchronicities.
Because I'll just use different words, but basically, again, my name is Regina. I am an author. I just recently published my first book. It's a
Congratulations.
novel called
Congratulations.
Shayla, and it's based on true events of my life. For 45 years, I lived a life of darkness and sadness. And I began writing my book. I began my work to create awareness to keep children safe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's sometimes when we operate from a phone, we get those disruptions and stuff that happen sometimes.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get back to Regina when she comes back online.
So, Lunaria, I have to say that I love your answers. And I'm thinking, I
Thank
don't
you.
think we had somebody, I don't remember, we probably did. I'm not on all podcasts because I'm a realtor and my schedule is hectic. And I love to be here. I love to make it a priority because it is fun. I enjoy it. You guys are all awesome. I cannot always do it, but I don't remember recently someone saying that they are their own hero. And
Mm.
that's awesome. Not too many people can say that. So in order for one to get to this place in life where they can affirm that with confidence, that means you did a lot of work where you
Mm.
actually appreciate, value, and see the true beauty that is in each and every one of us, but we cannot see it, right?
Thank you so much for noticing. I really appreciate that. I think that that's something that I take that as the highest compliment when someone reflects back to me the work that I've been spending my lifetime to do. I take that as very, very deep confidence. So thank you, love. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, Regina. So we take it from where we left it, and you're an author. Go
Yes.
ahead and tell us.
So I wrote my book. I began writing my book to create awareness to keep children safe. Because when I was 55 years old, I had a vivid memory that I was pleading with my mother not to make me go to music lessons. And then I realized that other children like myself, when I was 10 years old, could still be hurting or could still being molested. And when I began writing my book to create awareness to keep children safe, I realized my inner child was still hurt. So I began the work to become my own hero. I began the work to look in the mirror and tell myself that I am worth it and I am beautiful and I am intelligent. Those are the things that I was told that I was not when I was little. So now that I've done all this work for me, I want to have it be my journey to go out and spread the good news that people at my age or older or younger adults that are still hurting from child trauma, they can achieve emotional freedom.
Thank you so much, Regina, for sharing that. We're gonna have a lively conversation today. And maybe I would start with you, Regina, a bit to kind of talk about your relationship with fear. Seems like you're coming from a place where you might experience a lot of that. So I'm curious right now, are you still afraid?
I am
Are
not
you
afraid.
not afraid? Okay, you're not afraid. But what do you used to be afraid of then?
I used to be afraid of sadness, people. I used to always feel that nobody loved me, that no one would ever love me. And self doubt was my worst nightmare.
Mm,
And then when I began discovering the reason I felt that way was because of the trauma I experienced when I was 10 years old. I began to feel alive and feel strong and confident that I can change my way of thinking. I can achieve my emotional freedom once I learn how to reprogram my mind to believe on the great things that I can do and how wonderful I can be.
mm. I think you're speaking Lunaria's language because she was talking about how she coached people in loving themselves. So what's showing up for you right now, Lunaria?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and I'm there smiling and I'm nodding because it brings me. I don't know if anything brings me more joy than people falling in love with themselves, and really deeply, not in the arrogant or false kind of way of again being arrogant. I it's not even like that. What makes me feel me with joy is to build a really strong, healthy relationship with ourselves because we're with ourselves 24/7. And even if we were in a very codependent relationship to which someone else is with us 24/7, no one's in your head like you are. Maybe apart from God, depending on your belief system, but that you are the only one that you need to live with every single moment of every single day. And if that relationship isn't good, if it's destructive, if it's harmful, if it's self-deprecating, if it's full of self-doubt, like you say, Regina, with fear and doubt and all this negative self-talk, that makes life horrible, irrelevant of the circumstances. You could have all the good things in your life, but if what's going up between your ears and in your heart is an abusive place,
Mm,
then your life is a self-perpetuating abuse from the people who abused you in your past. And I think that, yes, nothing fills me with more joy. So congratulations, Regina, on the book, but also on the work that you've done to be able to come to this place. It's, a lot of people in this world don't do it, and I highly commend you for it. So well done.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And it's something interesting to highlight how we feel the need to help others in areas where we need help as well, or we needed help and we overcome whatever happened to us. So it's interesting how Regina said that she wanted to read this book to help other kids, and then she realized, oh, I have work to do as well. Because it's almost like this work never really ends. You know, you heal, and then some external triggers come, and you feel that, oh, I have to do some more work. So, but it's good to be aware so we can focus on it and overcome that.
Yeah, and I think, Lev, I would agree with you. I think that I see it like layers, and maybe it's an onion layers, but I often see it as a spiral. So in the very bottom of a funnel, a spiral funnel, the channel is really small, and so if there's a trigger point at one point, when you're in the very bottom of it, you're going to hit the trigger point often, frequently, and it's going to hurt like many times over. But as you grow and expand, the funnel gets wider, and you're still going to come around and hit the pain point, but you're not only hitting your pain point less frequently as the spiral gets wider and wider, as the funnel gets wider and wider. What you'll also experience is a higher viewpoint, like a spiraling staircase. You now get to see the same problem from a different angle, and it takes you longer to get around to the same problem. In my experience, I've been a coach for 14 years and done this work for myself, is exactly that there seems to be these themes that we keep coming back to in our lives. It's just that our perspective changes every single time we make our way back around another loop.
Very accurate description and very vivid. So thank you for adding that.
Pleasure.
My curiosity is in your journey a little bit, dear Lunaria. I'm wondering, what is that big fear that you had to really put down, like a hunter's gatherer, like that thing that you had to put down, like, okay, this fear, it was something that really pushed me in a certain place, but now that I've recognized what it is, it's no longer fear for you. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, look, I have a perhaps maybe a different perspective on fear. I don't, if you said, am I still afraid? I would say, well, yes, of the things that I haven't overcome yet. I think that fear is a very healthy mechanism within inside of us. And it's our relationship with fear. I truly wholeheartedly believe that fear needs a leader. And I will answer the personal part of the question. I get that. I definitely will. I'm not evading here. Just to give you a bit of context of where my belief system is, fear needs a leader. It's one of the most immature parts of us. It's like our little kid. It's more likely to run under the bed and say, "Oh my God, there's monsters," or "There's someone in the cupboard," and it's our job as the adult, as the higher self, as the wisdom to come in and reassure and lead the fear so that it doesn't lead us, because either it's in charge or we are. Someone else is in charge if you're not, effectively. So for me, I experience fear regularly, and I put myself in situations where I will experience fear. For example, more recently, I too have just finished publishing my second book, and I'm doing an in-person launch next Wednesday. And the mayor is coming, and there's lots of people attending that might, in my past, I might have thought they're better than me. They're more important than me. The big fear that I think that I keep facing in my life is the fear of not being enough. And I think that that's true for so many of us. We have this running thread of, I'm not enough, people won't like me. What if I get it wrong, being rejected? I think that they're all in the same flavor. So when I stare down the barrel of, quote, important people coming to celebrate me, there's that imposter syndrome that can come through. And I'm not going to stand here and say that I've, quote, overcome it. I think that I know how to lead it. And I know how to take action despite that fear. And I know that fear is just my smaller self trying to keep me safe. But it's the wisdom in me, it's my soul, it's my higher self that's actually in charge. And each time I take action and bring fear along with me, rather than ignoring it, rather than pushing it away, I bring fear with me. I know you're scared. I literally talk to my fear. Hello, fear. I can hear you. I know you're just trying to keep me safe. I know that that's your job. I want you to know that everything's going to be okay. Even if it doesn't look that way, I've got your back and we will be all right. And so that's my relationship with fear, that, with that fear of not being good enough. as I just said to Lav about the spiral, I think that it takes me longer to get back around. But every time I up level, every time I upgrade, and I think this is true for everybody, every time you hit a new edge in your life where you are expanding, I call it expansion points in my latest book, you will, I believe, you will hit fear. Fear will come and say, no, stay where you are. Irrelevant of how far you've come, fear is going to interrupt you and say, excuse me, when we shouldn't do that. So rather than get rid of fear, can we mend our relationship with it so it no longer is in charge?
Drop the mic right there. That is, it's wow. Thank you for touching on that, because I am sure there are a lot of people who are blocked by the fear and think that confident people don't feel fear. However, they do feel it, but do it anyway, right? And fear is not a bad thing, as you say. So yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Regina,
Yes.
in your world, my friend, what is the biggest gift that fear has granted you?
Well, I used to, just like she said, I used to feel always afraid and have that self doubt. And then what I did was have those talks to myself, go to the mirror and say, self, you are here now. You know what you need to do. When you have those feelings, those are triggers that will always show up. And when they show up and you have that feeling of self doubt, then you tell yourself it's a trigger. You know it's a trigger because you learn how to recognize them, and they will always show up. And I call it healing a broken heart. I don't call it my broken heart is healed. It's a healing broken heart where every day we have to maintain. It's like maintaining a beautiful flower with water in the hot sun. You have to give us that love and that understanding from the knowledge that we have acquired. So we move forward and we recognize that trigger, whether it's a rainy day or a presentation or a meeting with your supervisor or a problem that you have at home that you need to discuss with your family. That will always show up. And for me in the past, I was always defending myself. Oh, but I did that because, oh, but you don't understand. Now I speak from a nice, easy place in my heart where I'm kind to myself and I don't get so excited about defending myself, because I recognize those emotions can come up quick and control the conversation. And I'm aware of that. So now I am more at ease and more at peace with my mind.
You know, you was talking earlier, was you mentioned about the 10-year-old kid in you that had an experience. And I'm
Yes.
curious about that maturation process for that 10-year-old. Like, how do you speak to that 10-year-old? Like, it's like just like when you have a regular 10-year-old in the world today, like how do you speak to a regular 10-year-old or the 10-year-old version of yourself that hasn't really matured through that phase of your life? So how do you really speak to that person, that little girl in you?
Well, what I did was I actually did a book trailer, a short video for my book, where I run through the woods and I go to the scene of the crime. And my little girl from inside is still there at the scene of the crime, hurting. So I grabbed her out of there. And while we were being chased by the person that hurt me, we ran and we escaped. And then we did that. We celebrated escaping and leaving that person and that trauma behind. So I spoke to my little girl in the mirror and I said, what happened was not your fault. And then later on, when I speak, I make sure that I tell everyone it is never a child's fault. And we have to dig deep and find out what happened, go over it. We have to accept what happened. Then we have to realize and learn that it wasn't our fault as a child. How can it be your fault when you're 10 years old or 6 years old or even a teenager? And then we have to accept that what happened was very badly. but we are here now and we're not in that situation anymore. And for me, I make sure now that that person that hurt me does not have any power over me.
I was just going to ask you both ladies what to give us a technique and to the listener on how to heal, right? And Regina, you just answered. So that exercise with the little girl in the woods, I think it's a good mental exercise that we can all do. We can all go and search for that little hurt girl or boy, right? And run and save her. So it's great. Thank you very much. Lunaria, do you think you can give us a exercise, a technique, and advice on how to work around our overwhelming life experiences? Let's call them like that instead of traumas.
Drama. Yeah, yes. Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you. I think that, Regina, that exercise, when we talk about being your own hero, that's exactly what happened, right? You know, you going back in to go rescue yourself literally is you being your own hero. So highly recommend that. A question that I always like to ask my clients and anyone in my courses is what did you never hear from your parents that you've wished you could? Like, what did you never hear? What did they not say to you that you wish that they did in your life? And really sit down and journal upon that. What was it? Because, you know, when I talk about not feeling like I was good enough, I was told that I was loved all the time. As a child, my mum would say all the time, I love you, I love you, I love you. She didn't love herself, so I didn't believe her, right? In many ways, I believed that she loved me, but that didn't cause me to believe in myself. And so I think that for me and for everyone, when we really have a look at, well, what did our parents not say to us? And there'll be a series of things. It might be, I love you, but it might be, for me, it was, I want you. I choose you. You're important to me. You're valuable. I see you. All those words for me were something that I never really heard from my parents. And look, let's face it, I don't think many of us have had parents who are consciously evolved. You know, like they haven't done the work. So it's very likely that your parents couldn't give you what you needed at the time. But us as adults now, we can go back to our little children that are inside of us and speak to them in a way that you never heard as a parent, never heard from your parents, and you get to reparent yourself. So that would be my recommendation. Go and find out within yourself what was never said to you that you desperately needed to hear, and then start to give that to you.
Well, I'll take that idea and run with it a little bit forward because I thought about it, and that's powerful. And you're right; they did the best they could with what they had, and they had their own traumas, and that affected, you know, the way we were brought up. But I think about what they did not tell you, and you desperately needed to hear. And if you still have them around, and you have a chance to have a conversation with them, and you can maybe record them saying that to you, and then you have it with you, and then maybe you can listen to it. And this idea came to me when I was introduced to neuro-linguistic programming, right?
NLP, yeah.
NLP, right? And I was talking to this friend who's licensed, and we never never really scheduled a thing because I wanted to do it, and I was like, that's interesting, but we never really actually did it. But then I was thinking, because he said, write down whatever you want me to repeat when you are in that like hypnosis state, right? And then I was thinking, but wait, the most important voice in my life and in my childhood and in my subconscious mind is my mother's voice. How about I get her to say those things to me, right? But we never really did it. But I'll do it and I'll update you guys how it works.
That'd be great. And if I can build upon that for a moment, I think that's a great idea if you can get it in their voice. The caveat that I would caution, and I do this with my clients a lot, if you're wanting the healing to come from your parents, you may not get it because they may not be they may not have done the work themselves in your lifetime. So you might ask them for it and it might deepen the wound. And I'm not to say to don't do it. It's be careful when you're externalizing the relationship, because if you go to your mum and say, "Mum, can you say these words to me?" and she tells you to F off, or she rejects you in some way, you've got your beautiful little child who's so vulnerable. He's like, "Oh, mum, do this thing for me." And then they don't. It can really, it's not going to do any more damage, don't get me wrong, but it can be really deflating. And so I always encourage, certainly my clients and myself, that you heal it for you. You become the parent that you never had. And if you get the bonus of your parents saying it, then and it's useful because they don't know what they're saying and they're just recording it. Excellent. If we have too much emphasis on them saying what they never said to you, they may not, and they may not have the capacity to, because people can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. So if they haven't done the inner work, then unlikely to meet you. That's just what I just wanted to put there with a bit of a caveat, if that's all right.
It's awesome that you said that, and it's definitely a case-to-case thing. In my case, I know she would lovingly do that.
Yeah.
But I do want to say one thing. You know what? It's not that there are cases when they said those things. We just did not, it bounced off us because the other things were with us, they were registered, the bad things were like, so now you don't believe it anymore. It bounces off you. But when you did the healing, when you did the work, and now you're receptive, now those words that they probably said before, they will not bounce off you, right? Like
you
that.
Feel them.
Yeah. You will internalize them because you will accept them as being real. As before, it's like, no, that's not true.
Because you're open to receiving it.
I don't deserve that. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Great distinction.
I'm curious, Regina, do you have kids?
I don't.
You don't?
I don't have kids, but I love them, and I'm on a mission to create awareness to keep them safe. Because growing up in the 60s, for me, in my village, nobody talked about anything.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Portugal. And I never told my parents about what happened. And when I was 18, I left, came to the United States, and I never looked back. And my parents now both have passed. So what I did in my book, I wrote a spiritual letter to my father. And I told my father everything, and in hopes that it would help me release that information to him. And I started writing my book after both of my parents passed, because I never had the courage to tell them, because I didn't want them to hurt. I didn't want them to know that it happened during their shift. My mother made me go to music lessons when I pleaded with her not to go. And I never wanted to tell her why, because the person that was hurting me was a hero in the village. And I was told that my parents would never believe me. So I never told my mother why I didn't want to go. In 2015, I was talking to a woman that was very stressed out because a little girl didn't want to go to summer camp that year. And she had been going for so many years. But that summer, she did not want to go. She didn't want to return. She was maybe 11 years old, maybe 12. At that moment, I had that vivid memory that I pleaded with my mother not to make me go. And that was the day that I decided I wanted to create awareness, to pay attention to those signs when children say they don't want to go. There must be a reason, and we need to find out why. They're not going to say it. They're not going to speak the words, but they're going to show us signs. And like I said, when I started writing about creating awareness, I found out that I was still that little girl.
Do you think that letter helped?
Yes. In that letter, I began to tell my father why I became a very defiant teenager, why I didn't want to obey the rules, why I didn't want to go to church anymore. And then I told my father what had happened. And then I told him the woman that I have become, that I was okay, that I was doing well, and that I was still that little girl at 6 and 7 and 8 years old that he called Ladybug. I was still that person. And that's what I do now. I go back to those early years where I had a wonderful childhood, and I found my peace.
I
Do
know
you
it
do?
helps. I know it
Mhm.
helps because I did that too. I wrote a letter to my father as well, who passed away when I was 14. And it
Yes,
helps. I just wanted to hear it from you as well, so the listeners can maybe do that if they need to talk to somebody who's not around
yes,
anymore.
yes. And always, what I like to always tell people is this is a journey, and this is a healing process. We're always going to remember certain things, and we're always going to have that fear or the triggers. But when you educate yourself on what it is that you need to do for your divine power to come through, and the energy that you have in your brain, and you educate yourself on how you can connect, that's when you know that you're on your way to have peace.
Thank you for sharing all that with us, Regina.
Okay.
Do you have siblings, Regina?
I do. I
Okay.
have 4 sisters. They all older, and I have a sister in California and 2 sisters in Canada, one in Portugal. And when I published my book, they were all very upset because they belong to that old-fashioned culture where you don't shame the family. You just keep everything hush hush, and you don't talk about anything like that, especially after so many years later. So they all disapproved of me publishing my book. But I explained to them the reason I wrote my book, not because I want to talk about what happened to me, but I want people to understand why I want to create awareness for children, and why I want to speak about healing a broken heart. We can do it. We just have to learn how to do it.
Oh, it's another good topic that you just touched on, Regina. How to write a book, how to help other people, how to be vulnerable and share our raw story without hurting the dear ones.
And
Yes.
that we might, if even by hearing that, Regina, just massive congratulations, because we so we're more likely to just want to keep within the family. Okay, well that's gonna annoy people, it's going to upset people. The fact that you went and have done it anyway because that's the truth of your soul. Oh, just my hat's off to you. I highly commend you for that. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm the youngest of 5 too. Would you believe it?
Yes.
So you're the youngest of 5 and I'm the youngest of 5.
Look, we believe it here because usually synchronicities like this happen in this on this podcast, so we believed it.
Yeah, mine's
Everything.
4 older brothers, but you've got 4 older sisters.
Yes, so it seems like you and I are both on the same exact path, that we have the same exact thoughts and maybe different words, but we have the same exact teachings.
Don't we?
And I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how strong Regina is, because when you think about the thing she carried for how many years without sharing it, just imagine how heavy that was. And oftentimes when people saying that you don't want to embarrass dear ones or so forth and so on, right? Oftentimes we don't understand like how heavy this thing you've been carrying. Are you pushing this ball up this hill for so many years, and you want to like, I need a break. I need to be free of this thing, and the only way to be free of it is to share it, put light on it. And oftentimes people don't understand how relieving that is when you get to do it. And then when it gets out there and other people acknowledge and validate it, and like, yeah, that's even more empowering too. But then you really got to lift that weight off your shoulder. So I'm assuming you bench press a lot of weight there, Regina.
Yes, I when I was little, like I said, my father used to call me Ladybug, and I was very small and had long hair. It was dark, and they called me Ladybug. They told me I was the cutest ladybug they have ever seen. But then my abuser told me that I was a cockroach and that I was stupid and ugly. And it crushed my heart. For my teenage years, I was sad and always hiding from everyone. And then my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I always managed to have good jobs and I always managed to do okay in life, but not so much in my mind. And it wasn't until that time that I realized that child could be in trouble in 2015 that I said, wait a minute, I am no cockroach. I am intelligent. I've had good jobs. I have an education. Why am I thinking that I'm so stupid? And that's when I decided to go to the mirror and say, you need to change. You need to learn how to love yourself. And that's when I realized that I didn't know how to love.
Mm.
I had no idea. I've had relationships where people told me they loved me. I never believed them. And it's the strangest thing. Once I learned how to love who I am from a very loving, kind, humble place in my heart, it's very important to make sure it's not coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of love. And I realized that I was getting somewhere when people say things that I didn't like and I didn't have to respond. I didn't have to defend myself. If I like something, I like something. If I don't want to do something, I don't. And I speak from a really, really sweet place in my heart. And I start back then, well, a couple of years ago when I started doing the work, I realized that my balanced mind was working because I was no longer in great need to defend myself all the time. And there's no anger. Love just loves. Love doesn't see things. Love doesn't see shapes and color and height and whatever. Love just loves. And I love that. I love the fact that I can see it now and I feel it. And it wasn't until I started to love who I am that I understood how I can love another person.
Oh,
I believe you.
powerful, Regina. Thank you.
I believe you. And I don't want to be one of the first to meet for the first time, Regina. Say, I love you too, my friend. And I believe you. And I want everybody that's in the room right now. Do you guys love Regina?
Oh,
Amen.
absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lunaria, can you share with us your journey of self-love?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my first book is titled Perfectly Imperfect, and it's your complete guide to loving yourself and loving your body. And I would say that, similarly, it was this moment of I had spent my entire life thinking that if I could just get skinny, if I could just look a certain way, then I would be worthy, then I would be enough, then I would feel okay within myself. That I spent my whole life thinking that my body was wrong, that I was wrong, that who I was too big, not just in the physical flesh, but in my being. Everyone often told me, or certainly my mother growing up, don't get too big for your boots, don't shine too much, don't make other people feel uncomfortable because you're too shiny. That I got that feedback a lot in my childhood of like, oh no, you're intimidating, not they're intimidated. I got the feedback that I was intimidating. And so I learned my entire life to just dull myself, to cut off the edges, to make sure that I people pleased everybody else, to make sure that they liked me because I didn't like me. I was never modeled like or love for myself or like that personal relationship. So, I was 16 the first time that I deliberately went on a diet and I lost 20 kilos, which is, I think, about 45 pounds if we put it
Yeah.
into imperial there. So, that was the first time. And from the age of 16 through to about 28, really. I'm now 40, close to 41. So for a good 12 years, I just lost and put on weight. And I would put on 20 kilos and I would lose it again. And I would put it on. And the very first time I ever lost the weight, everybody told me that I was fantastic. For the first time in my life, I was praised, at least praise to which I heard, Lav, coming back to what you said before.
Yeah.
I received it. And people didn't just say that I looked good, they said that I was good. and I believed them. And this huge link between, oh, I'm more valuable when I'm small, and not just in stature, not just in physicality. People like me more. People appreciate me more when I'm small in my body and small in my being. And so I spent all my life just crushing myself and going on diets and hating myself. And that led eventually to an eating disorder in my early 20s that lasted, a long time, really. The reality of it is that it's something that can still rear its head for me now, because it led me to go, I'm not enough. It's again that coming back to that fear, right? That fear of I'm not enough. And so the journey for me around actually loving myself started with my body. It started with being able to fully accept, we live in a world that profits from self-hate. We live in a world that is driven by appearance. And I'm 40 now. If we think about when I really started doing this work with my body, it was 15 years ago. Body positivity and people like Lizzo weren't around. That it wasn't okay to love your big body by any stretch of the imagination. Even when I first got brought out Perfectly Imperfect 3 years ago, the world's changed a lot since then. So I grew up hating myself, thinking that I wasn't enough, thinking that I was too much at the same time. I'm too much and I'm not enough. And the dieting, the self-abuse was hectic. It wasn't just food that I abused, but drugs and alcohol and sex and relationships and anything that I could get my hands on to distract myself from the feelings of shame of myself, I used. And it wasn't until I was in my, when I say about mid-20s, I went and did the backpacker thing in Europe. I went and lived in Europe for 2 years on my own. And I really got to start to discover who I wanted to be. And even though that's when my eating disorder really kicked off, at the same time, it was a really changing experience for me because I started to reflect upon, is this how I want to be? It wasn't until I would say 2011. So what's that? 13 years ago. I'm number five, as I said just before. I'm number five in the family. Number four brother, who I was incredibly close with my entire life, he died of a brain tumor when he was 28 and I was 27. And that moment in my life, you asked a question before, Asher, around how has fear, you know, been a great thing for you, been a great lesson. I don't think I ever recognized that losing a brother was the biggest fear I'd ever had. But losing him, he was my hero up until that point. I would call him my hero. He would regularly come to rescue me at school. He was my hero. And when he died and the subsequent years after that, that was very hard for me. I just really stopped and reflected, going, do I want to spend the rest of my life hating myself? Do I want to be at war with my body? Do I want to keep hating myself the way that I've always done it? And over, years and years, I decided that that wasn't the case. I don't want to do that anymore, because what my brother's death really showed me was that I might not get old. And I never realized that up until that point. I just kind of assumed that I would. But when he died, I was like, well, if my hero, if the one and only, if the biggest, impactful, strongest person in my life can die suddenly, then I could too. And rather than that cripple me in fear, it actually propelled me into action. And the real healing journey of loving myself began at that point, just like you, Regina, standing there in the mirror going, do I really want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep hating myself? Because it's not working. You cannot reject yourself into love. You cannot shame yourself into wholeness. And that was, my journey from 2011 when he died to as we sit here in, sorry, it was 2011. No, it couldn't have been 2011. Sorry, it was 2011. I'm looking at the date. It was 13 years ago. So yeah, where that the last 13, 14, 15 years of my life have been extraordinary in the healing journey.
Congratulations to you.
Thank
the
you.
question I asked earlier was what gift that fear granted you, and I guess your brother that granted you some liberation. So it seems like so. Thank you
It
all.
was
We
one of the
gotta wrap
greatest
up.
gifts of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many women are resonating with what you just shared, because you know how you were saying that now the embrace your body idea, no matter the size, no matter the, but think about the other countries who this idea didn't really reach there yet. And it's funny, it's not funny, but it's interesting how you said that when you went to Europe, the disorder started. I think that we are a little bit one step behind when it comes to body and beauty patterns and all that, because there until very recently, very very skinny was still the beauty pattern. So yeah, a lot of women are resonating with your story.
Yeah, and I think that even still now, even with body positivity, the backlash on that is so huge that eating disorders are on the rise. There's no two ways about it. And I'm not sure if, kind of off topic, but there's a drug called Ozempic, which is a weight loss drug. And, celebrities are using it to not go from being obese, which is who it's for, really. It's to go from, I've got an extra 5 pounds on my body and I want to lose it. And it's self-starvation. So I think that we're in a really interesting time when it comes to body positivity, because there's one narrative of love and accept yourself, but then there's the anti-narrative of that. And I think that if you're caught in the midfire and the crossfire of that, you won't know whether you're Arthur or Martha. You won't know how to make decisions around it, because I think the world is still pushing towards a beauty standard that is still unrealistic, despite the fact that we have amazing superstars that are forging the way.
But we can overcome all this with self-love, and it seems like you did.
Of course we can. Of course we can. Yep.
Wow. Well, we gotta wrap up. Gotta respect both you guys' time. And I was going around the room real fast, starting with you, Lunaria. What was your biggest takeaway from this conversation?
Oh, the biggest takeaway from today's conversation is Regina's story. That story of irrelevant of the circumstances in your life, irrelevant of the experiences that you've had, you can heal. And it is about making your decision. If you, and it's not just once, and I'm sure Regina would agree with this, you don't just make a decision to love yourself and heal yourself once. And you said this, Regina, too. It's an ongoing relationship. It's something that you continue on for forevermore. So I think that many times people can say, oh, yeah, you can learn to love yourself, but you don't understand, I was abused as a child, or I had this very bad thing happen to me. And Regina, you're standing here as a victor in this, an absolute victor, in the sense that you can, irrelevant of the circumstances, you can still make the decision to heal your relationship with yourself. So it's Regina.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Same question for you, Regina. What is your biggest takeaway?
Well, I am so honored and overjoyed that there's a woman in Australia that is a soul sister now, and she feels in the way I feel. And her introduction, it was just my introduction, just different words. And I'm so glad to see that there's other people out there like myself teaching self-love, and not to be confused with ego. It's not that. It's about true intention and genuine kindness, and be gentle with who you are and connect with your divine energy, and you will be okay. You just have to take that step to start learning how you can do it.
Thank you so much. What
I'm
about you,
curious to
Lab?
know Asher's and Lav's key takeaways. Do we have?
Say
Oh
again?
yeah, I have.
I'm curious to know your 2 takeaways from Asher
Okay.
and Lav.
I definitely, mine are prepared like never before. I do want to say that I appreciate you both, ladies. Thanks so much for being vulnerable and sharing your stories and making this world a better place. And I want to thank you both for the visuals that you brought to this conversation that will stick with me. And with your permission, I will use them as well. I'll say which one, and then I will ask for your permission. So Regina, the visual with you going in the woods to rescue that little girl in you, I think that was genius. And Lunaria, your visuals with the funnel, I think that was genius as well, because that explains how no, even if you did the healing and you're out of that tiny place in the funnel, you will eventually still hit it every now and then. Very rare, but you still do it. Don't beat yourself up. It doesn't mean that you didn't do a lot of the work to be where you are. And it's normal. Don't beat yourself up. Just embrace it and go higher and higher. So with time you will touch it less and less. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. What I see today is two incredible women that has went through this amazing life school, learn a lot from their own journey, and then finding the courage to really go out there and share it with other people, because oftentimes it's not easy to share what's in the dark when you're surrounded by people that are telling you not to. And when you find the courage to do that, that is very empowering. So I do commend both of you, especially you, Regina, for just really coming on. Take you a long time to really take you a long time to come out, but still you carry that weight a very long time. Because I understand what that feeling can feel like with certain things that you can't say because family doesn't approve.
That's right.
Same thing with you, Lunaria. You are, by the way, I love your use of words, by the way, Lunaria. You're very good with words, by the way. I'm hearing the way you put things together, and I was like, oh my God, I love your combination of words. So that's a good talent I saw in you when you were explaining things. So you sound like you would explainer of things. Maybe because you're a writer. Oftentimes, writer got ways to put words together. Very good combination of words. So yeah. Oh, final question for both of you. Starting with you, Lunaria. What is that one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy?
Oh wow. Oh, like nothing comes up
Mm,
straight away in my mind. Yeah. Look, I think that maybe from a personal development position, if I would,
mm-hmm.
that maybe a yeah, something that gets on my nerves in the personal development world, I would think, is when people dismiss their own emotions. I
Mm,
think that in the personal development world, that's what it's coming to mind straight away. So I'm just going to trust it. Is that there's a spiritual bypassing that happens, especially in personal development and in spiritual development kind of worlds, where they say something along the lines of, well, that's how you feel and you're responsible for your feelings. Now, I would agree. I agree, right? We are responsible for our feelings, but they say, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way," and then they don't take any responsibility for their behavior. Yeah, loves having a field day over here. Yeah, the complete spiritual bypassing that it occurs with, that's nothing to do with me. It's your own, and also like, well, I'm just love and light. Love and light, good vibes only. I'm like, no, you're missing the point. You are human. If you're only love and light, you are missing out the whole range of emotions that actually come from being a human.
mm-hmm.
And you're overlooking them and you're bypassing them, and that is keeping you trapped. So I think that they're too intertwined, those two things of the avoidance of emotions under the guise of I'm spiritual. I'm really about being human. I'm a very spiritual individual, very, very much so. I have a huge connection and deep love relationship with God. But you're human. You're here to deal with your emotions. And if we do not deal with our emotions, we will get blocked and we get emotionally constipated. And then people end up, shitting all over everyone else.
Great choice of words again, Lunaria. Thanks.
I told you she's good at this. She's good. I'm listening.
Yeah,
I'm
she's
listening.
also.
She's pretty good at this. What about you, Regina? What is that one thing or two thing when people do drive you crazy?
Exactly what my soul sister said.
There you go.
People tell me, how did you get there? And I say, well, the first thing you need to do is be in control of your emotions, recognize your emotions, recognize how your body follows your emotions. And they listen to me and they're like this. And then and then they want me to help them. I spend time and I give them the best that I can give them in terms of my time and how I've done it, and they do nothing.
Yes, that's a big one too. Yeah.
And my final question, thank you so much for sharing, Regina. Is somebody hear your story right now, Regina, like, oh my God, That was so incredibly powerful, and I would love to work with you. How can they do that?
Well, Shayla, that's my Facebook public page, but LaFrancemedia.com is my website. And LaFrance is LA, and the word France like the country, LaFrancemedia.com. Contact is there. My story is there. My movie is there. It's an 8-minute video, Shayla book trailer, also on YouTube. They can go ahead and check it out, LaFrancemedia.com, everything you want to know. And if you'd like to know a little bit about the story, it will be on there too. And I'd love to hear from everyone.
Mm, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
And
you.
same thing, Lunaria. Somebody heard you just now, like, wow, this lady is incredible. And I would love to connect and find a way to work with her. How can I do that?
Yeah, look, the easiest way is to find me on social media across the board. In fact, if you just Google Lunaria Gaia, you will find my website by the same name, lunariagaia.com. You will find me across all the socials under that name. And of course, if I just may,
Mm-hmm.
this is my brand
Yeah.
new book. Brand new book. I can, where's my camera? Get Happy and Free, Unlocking the Happiness Code. Just came out last week. And then Perfectly Imperfect was my first book, both bestsellers, which is great. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them on my website. But if you
Curious,
are
can you hold up
curious to,
the first one up? Is that you on the cover?
yeah, that is me. So I've had a bit of a transformation in the last 3
Move
years
it a
since
little
I've
bit towards which way? Where, yeah. Oh, nice. Good job.
so it was really important to me that this is me at my heaviest. I'd given birth 3 months earlier, and it was so important to me that I showed up on that cover in a bikini as a bigger bodied individual because I just and so liberated as well. If you look at the picture, like so
Mm-hmm.
happy, so free. It was
Yeah.
so important to show that, because I learned to love my body at my heaviest. And my body has since changed, but it's been an act of love, not an act of hate, which it always used to be. So yeah, there's transformations and it's a gorgeous one. So
Mm. No, well,
yeah, just Google
congratulations to
me.
both of you for being
Thank you.
authors, because that's a powerful journey, by the way. That's a powerful journey to be
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, you two
Thank
both as well,
you.
right?
Yes, yes, me and Live. We got a couple books out there in the world. People can check them out. Any last word, Live?
Thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate you. You are awesome.
Thank you so
Thank,
much.
thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. With that, you're tuned into Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And today you got some wisdom from Regina and Lunaria and Queen Lav. With that, make it an awesome week.